Have you ever felt like you just barely escaped something truly dangerous without even realizing it at the time? When I was a kid, my family had a small vacation home in Colorado. It was an old place, worn down from years of use, but it had been in our family for decades. My parents were avid skiers, which is why they bought it in the first place, and even though it was showing its age, it still held a lot of memories. This story takes place about 15 years ago when I was 8 and my brother Josh was 11. We were up at the house during a heavy blizzard, one of those snowfalls where the world turns into a silent white abyss. For us, it was the perfect playground. The property was surrounded by thick woods, and beyond that, a few other large properties, mostly empty during the winter months. It was an ideal setting for our favorite game, a mix of capture the flag and snowball fights. The rules were simple. We'd each build a fort and hide a large snowball, our jewel, behind the walls. The goal? Steal the other person's jewel and bring it back to your base. We could take the road or cut through the woods to get there, but once the whistle blew, the game was on. Josh ran off to set up his fort at a neighboring property. It was a house we played around often because no one ever seemed to be there. I waited in my own fort for his signal, except it never came. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The snow muffled everything, so I figured maybe I just hadn't heard the whistle. I decided to go find him. The woods were a no-go for me. At 8 years old, trekking through dark, snow-laden trees during a blizzard sounded terrifying, so I took the road. It was slow going through the knee-deep snow, but eventually I reached the driveway of the neighboring house. I expected to see Josh in his fort, grinning like he was about to ambush me. Instead, I saw nothing. His fort was there, the game set up just as planned, but he was gone. Then a voice called out, "Excuse me, are you looking for your brother?" I turned and saw an older woman standing at the front door of the house. She smiled at me, but something about it made my stomach twist. "We're playing a game," I called back. She tilted her head. "Your brother isn't here." I hesitated. From where I stood, I could see footprints leading up to the house. Josh's footprints. They didn't come back out. That's when I noticed something else. A figure in one of the upstairs windows. At first, I thought it was Josh. But the longer I looked, the more I realized it wasn't. The person's face was half covered by a black beanie, the lower half hidden beneath the window frame. They weren't moving, just watching. The woman stepped forward. "Come inside," she said, her voice too sweet, too coaxing. "You must be freezing." That's when I knew something was wrong. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I did the only thing my little kid brain could think of. I shouted my brother's name. "Josh!" The woman's smile vanished. From inside the house, I heard heavy footsteps coming fast, moving down the stairs. I bolted. I ran so fast I don't even remember my feet hitting the ground. As I sprinted up the road, I heard my dad's familiar whistle, the one he used to call us in for dinner. I turned a corner and saw him and Josh standing at our driveway looking for me. Josh was already shouting, "Dad, there were people in that house. They tried to get me to come inside." Before I could even catch my breath, I blurted out the same thing. My dad didn't hesitate. He grabbed something from the house and stormed down the road toward the neighbor's house. We waited inside with our mom, hearts pounding. When he came back, his face was tight with anger. The owners of the house weren't home. In fact, they hadn't been there in weeks. The police were called, but by the time they got inside, the place was empty. No sign of the woman, no sign of the person upstairs, nothing. After that, my parents took home anything valuable whenever we left, just in case. And Josh and I, we never set foot on that property again. Looking back, I still get chills thinking about what might have happened if we had stepped inside that house. I learned the hard way that sometimes gut feelings are more than just paranoia. They can be the difference between a fun weekend with friends and something far worse. I've been skiing for as long as I can remember. My parents were competitive skiers. That's actually how they met. So naturally they had my siblings and me on the slopes as soon as we could stand. Fast forward to a few years ago when I was 21, a senior in college, and planning a weekend ski trip with my best friends, Jaden, Ryland, and Amir. Vermont was our go-to. If you know anything about skiing in the Northeast, you know Vermont has some of the best mountains around. This trip was supposed to be like any other. A weekend of hitting the slopes, pushing our limits, and of course a little après-ski fun. Jaden booked the trip, Ryland drove, and I just showed up ready for adventure. The mountain was massive, so many trails, lifts, and peaks that even after 2 full days we still hadn't seen everything. It was our second day, and with only an hour left before the lift shut down, we were trying to make the most of it. That's when we met them. 2 girls, Taylor and Devon, approached us at the top of the lift. They were stunning, almost unnervingly so. It wasn't just their looks, though. It was the way they carried themselves, confident and direct, like they knew we'd follow their lead. They struck up a conversation, claiming they were bored because the mountain was full of older skiers. It made sense. They seemed about our age, and we were probably the only ones reckless enough to be throwing back fireball shooters between runs. They were charming, too. Devon especially was knowledgeable about skiing, asking Amir about his high-end gear. Meanwhile, Taylor teased us about our choice of drinks before pulling out a bottle of something stronger. We didn't question it, we just laughed and took a few swigs. That's when Devon asked if we'd ever skied a trail called Devil's Forest. None of us had heard of it. She said it was a glade trail, one of those winding paths that snake through dense trees. We loved glades. The idea of a secret, rarely used run was too tempting to pass up. We followed them, veering off the main trails into an area that felt isolated. No tracks, no skiers, just untouched snow. Soon, we had to unclip our skis and hike uphill. A red flag in hindsight, but at the time, we were too caught up in the excitement to care. Jaden, always the rational one, whispered that something felt off. I agreed. I'd never had to hike to reach a trail before. But what could happen? We were 4 guys and they were just 2 girls, right? When we reached a clearing, Devon pulled out the bottle again. Devon, one last toast before the final run. Amir and Ryland, ever the life of the party, took generous swigs. Jaden hesitated, and for a split second, I swear I saw something flicker in Devon's expression. Something dark. But when I blinked, she was smiling again. I pretended to drink, letting the liquid barely touch my lips before passing it back. I don't know why I did that. Maybe it was my gut talking. Maybe I just didn't want to overdo it before our last run. Either way, it saved me. Minutes later, we were skiing down the so-called Devil's Forest Trail. It was steeper than expected, but nothing we couldn't handle. At the bottom, I let out a breath of relief until I realized something was wrong. There was no lift, no signs, just trees. I turned to the girls. "Where's the lift?" "Taylor, relax, it's close." Then Ryland collapsed, just boom, flat on his back in the snow. Amir followed seconds later. Jaden and I rushed over, shaking them, trying to wake them up. They were breathing, but completely out cold. "What the hell did you give us?" The girls just stood there, watching. No shock, no concern, just waiting. It hit me then, they weren't surprised. This was planned. Jaden took a step toward them and dropped like a stone. My stomach turned to ice. I was next. I could feel my head swimming, my limbs heavy. But I hadn't actually swallowed the drink. I still had control. Barely. The girls exchanged a glance. "Taylor, VO." He didn't drink enough. "Devon, VO, we have to go." They bent down, unclipping Amir and Ryland's skis before dragging them toward the woods. For what? I didn't want to know. My body refused to move, but I forced myself to focus. I wasn't blacking out. That was my advantage. I don't know how long I sat there, trying to will my muscles to work again. Minutes passed. My vision cleared. My fingers tingled with life. As soon as I could move, I stumbled after them, following their tracks in the snow. Then I saw it, the road, and a van. The side door slid open and 4 men stepped out, big, heavy-set guys. One of them pointed straight at me. I froze. They were arguing, debating whether to come after me. I didn't wait to find out. I turned and ran, my legs barely cooperating, back to my friends. Jaden was groggy but awake. Together we shook Amir and Ryland until they finally stirred. We had no answers, only terror. Who were those girls? Who were those men? Was this just an elaborate robbery or something worse? We reported everything to the police, but without real descriptions or evidence, there wasn't much they could do. It even made local news, but the trail went cold. We never found out what was in that drink. Nothing we researched matched the symptoms, fast, potent, and selective in its effects. Even now, years later, I still wonder what would have happened if I had taken a real sip, if I had blacked out with my friends. One thing's for sure, I'll never ignore my gut again.